APIs are the backbone of modern web infrastructure, but how do they work? I mean, everybody knows you call an API, you get data. But fundamentally, how do APIs work? Well, luckily, they're actually quite simple. Here, I asked AI to generate me a quick API, and it chose to use Flask, which is a high level structure, meaning you don't have to know what's going on behind everything as much as a low level, but it still shows you what is happening. Now, here you can see it defines root, which is basically the API endpoint. You probably already know what the API endpoint is. In this case, it's API/hello. Now, this is good to understand what is going on. Basically, you make a route, you have data, you send the data when someone requests the data after starting a specific server. Now, I wrote this piece of code using to call an API using socket instead, which is usually much better. Now, I will try to explain it line by line, but you don't have to understand it line by line. You just have to understand what's going on. So, here we create a socket, which is the library I decided to use. You don't know what it is or how it works. You just have to know it creates a web server or a server port on a specific host and a specific port, and then has a specific path, the API endpoint, which then, if you request that specific path, you will receive the data you want it to give, which in this case is the date. Now, this is running on port 5000, which is just an arbitrary port I chose. And so here, to call the API, I will be using a open server, as the n8n cannot call a specific um specific local IP address, as the local IP address isn't connected to the larger internet and only to your local router. So I will be tunneling it through to a web address instead, which is which does give it access to the internet. I'll be using ngrok, but I'm sure there are a few other choices you could have chosen. So as you can see here, this is the URL. It You will find the API, and then the API itself, which is the API endpoint. So that's pretty simple. So now let's see what happens if I run the API, the program I wrote. Now it's listening for an API request. Now I will just tunnel the port I chose. Okay. So now if I run this workflow, it should request data from the API. And there we have the time. So this is a really cool and useful tool in basic web development and anywhere in the internet, b- basically. So, n- after watching, I hope you understand how APIs work, better how APIs work and what is used. And if you do understand Python, you could try and read through this program just to see what's actually happening. As I did give a very um, overarching summary of what is actually going on here. But thank you for watching.